Coug's house wasn't always pretty. A lot of points coming out of the courts at the end of the day, got the job done, and somehow that's not going to be the biggest story out of that one.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. It's going to be short today, short, sweet, and to the point. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're going to jump right into Houston's big 77-68 win over Colorado in the Big 12 quarterfinals, the Big 12 tournament. I want to talk about the game itself. I want to talk briefly about what all comes next. But honestly, I think the biggest stories and takeaways from this one are going to be that what comes next. So I'm going to try and quickly fly through this one. Houston built out a big lead. It got as big as 14, kind of kept Colorado at that 8 to 10 range for a lot of the second half. Had a big first half, Emanuel Sharp hitting big shot after big shot, hit some threes from deep in rotation. LJ Cryer got into the action a little bit early too. I think my favorite part of the backcourt, though, was watching Milos Uzan attack the cup heading downhill in the second half. They really were intentional about getting him going. And frankly, it looked like they just kind of wore out with defensive pressure and speed, the Colorado Buffaloes, right? And makes sense. That was their third game in as many days, and they played over the weekend a competitive game with TCU. Yakimovsky, career game for him out of Colorado, had 25 points. I'm trying to double check my stats and info here, but he's the kind of guy that honestly hadn't even had a whole lot of double-figure games throughout the season, and so that he had 25 against Houston's the kind of thing. He averaged exactly 10 after today's game, so it pulled it up some, obviously. But that means he had a lot of games below 10. And so if you look at Yamakovsky's season, I think obviously he's the kind of guy where he's an upperclassman, fifth-year guy, transferred into Colorado to be in this conference, play in this conference. He wanted it as bad as anyone. For what it's worth, 25 is a whole heck of a lot more than the 3 points he had the last time these two teams played. Outside of that, though, Houston locked everyone else down. Julian Hammond lit them up for 22 the first time they played. He had just 9, and most of those were late. Houston really, really executed a strong defensive game plan here. Elijah Malone had spots and moments in his 18 minutes on the floor for Colorado, but Houston was able to kind of negate his impact as well. Elijah Malone had a big first 2 games of the tournament, did not seem to matter for Houston. Now, Houston moves on. We're breaking down a full episode for tomorrow, but in a quick live reaction, I want to make sure that we get to the part that comes next for Houston. That is the BYU Cougars, who have been on a bit of a hot streak since these two teams met early in conference play. The last meeting was, let me get the date right here, Saturday, January 4th. We're coming up on 2.5 months since that happened. Houston won that one by 30, right? That one felt like a drumming. But since then, BYU climbed all the way up to the 4th seed in the Big 12, has reeled off, 13 wins in a row, including a knockoff of Iowa State in the conference quarterfinals. It's probably the toughest matchup of any of the teams that got a bye, and BYU seemed to handle it pretty well in a high-scoring 96-92 affair. Richie Saunders is an all-Big 12 caliber player for them. In his Houston game, he didn't break 10, I don't believe. Wasn't like his best outing, but he has been in the 20-point range, up over 20 more often than not for like the last 6 weeks. Really, really impressive athlete. And Houston's going to need some extra bodies thrown at him throughout this one. I'm looking to connect with Jake Hatch at Locked On BYU Cougars later to get you some content to kind of help unravel what's all happening with them in the last 2 months more thoroughly. But I will say they're an impressive group. They're hot. They're a team I don't want to see in the NCAA tournament, but Houston will be seeing very, very soon in the conference semis of the Big 12 tournament. That game tips off at 6 o'clock Central Time in Kansas City. So 6 o'clock Central Time, and it will be on ESPN2, I believe, for the folks that have not made it up made the trip up. Obviously, I have not either. I sit here and record in my little studio. I got set up here in the guest room. But I do think that that's going to be a fun and close game. As far as matches go, besides Richie Saunders, I do think Houston wins most of the other matchups. I think that that's in large part because they're going to make Jaeger Dimon more of a passer, and he's very, very comfortable with that. Jaeger is probably a lottery pick in the NBA draft just on potential. But as all football coaches you've ever heard say, potential just means you ain't done it yet. Jaeger Dimon is still really, really good, but he's really, really raw, right? And so when you see him as an athlete, you see a guy that's 6'7", runs the point, passes the ball well, over 5.5 assists a game, right? Has a very pro demeanor to his game because he played professionally in Europe before coming to college basketball. But ultimately, this is a guy that on the season is averaging about 12 points, about 6 assists, right? And whatever, over 5.5 assists, I should say. And he really, from an athletic standpoint, should be dominating. And so that means I'm probably doing here is jinxing them and he'll dominate tomorrow. But honestly, I feel like that's the kind of thing where Milos and Emanuel and Terrence and Malik can kind of get up under his skin a little bit. Houston plays a very physical brand of basketball, and we're looking to knock off BYU, who shoots the ball really, really well. But I'd imagine that they're trying to push BYU off of that 3-point line. BYU has, let me double check my math here. They got 4 guys shooting 38% or higher from three, all on normal attempts, and then one guy shooting 37 from three, on Dolan Hall. That's a team that can really light it up from deep. Houston's going to do the same thing they did the first time and run them off the line and hopefully have someone behind them at the rim. Which leads us to the part that I think everyone's been looking forward to talking about, and that is Jawan Roberts. I've obviously sent messages out in text. First of all, I hope that he's okay, right? I think that's the biggest thing for him and his sake. But when you ask around about this kind of thing, it sounds like the kind of deal where if this were the NCAA tournament, there would be no doubt he was playing tomorrow. X-rays were negative after they told us that after the game. And for what it's worth, it looked like a bad roll to me. He did walk back and forth to the locker room, but on a bad play underneath the basket, Roberts faked a dribble handoff and drove baseline and stepped on a Colorado Buffalo foot before going up for a layup, and then kind of hobbled over and then collapsed next to the bench. Now, John Houston got to him right away over there, and he stayed down. I wonder if it had not been up by the Houston bench, if he might have been able to get up and walk to the bench and got checked out. It felt really intense to be there for a moment because he did stay down. We didn't really see his face on the telecast. But on the telecast, they showed him get up, walk to a bench seat, then walk to the back, get checked out, watch the game on the screen for a second, and then after getting some news, which we now know is that it was not broken, he walked back to the bench, all under his own power, gingerly, but under his own power. And again, I'm getting the vibe between who Jawan is. So I'm played last year, getting his knee drained every 3 or 4 days. I'd imagine this was an NCAA tournament game. There would be no doubt that he was playing on Friday. This being a Big 12 conference semifinal in a conference that Houston already locked up in the regular season by multiple games. Houston feels like they may have just earned a 1 seed overall by just getting to the semifinal, or a 1 seed in a particular region, I should say, just by getting to the conference semifinal anyway. And for what it's worth, if you have a great Jojo Tugler, a great Javier Francis, even a great Ced Lock game behind him, you can kind of get away without playing him. I bet they're cautious based on how he wakes up in the morning, how swollen it is, and that kind of stuff before they move forward. We'll know a lot more throughout the day tomorrow. They'll know a lot more throughout the day tomorrow. We'll know a lot more as soon as they say it. Kelvin probably don't want to play his cards out in the open too much on that. But go through all scenarios. We're also going to talk to Jake some later. So all kinds of things. Houston Cougars getting ready for BYU, talking BYU, Houston, the conference semifinals, all things Cougs and Cougars on Friday. Locked On Coogs is primarily Locked On Podcast Network. You're going to get a couple episodes more, I promise. That means your team every day, sometimes a couple times. And it's March, baby. It's March. Go Cougs.